And live on a Friday. Are we actually live? Yes, we are. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the midweek episode of Get Lit. Welcome to the not midweek, the end of the week episode of the live show, which always happens end of the week. Just mute myself here so I can narcissistically look at this video of me. When I was young, um, I really got into dancing, which remains the case as a middle-aged man of 43 years of age. And I didn't really have the courage to go to a dance studio, but I sure loved dancing and practicing dancing and it's so cool. And I also didn't have any mirrors. I didn't have a studio. And the nice thing about studios, you get a wall of mirrors you can really see and like practice in front of it. But we didn't have that. And so the only thing I really had was there's the dining room in my parents' house, and then there's like a window out onto their deck, a two-paned door, I guess, one of those sliding doors. And so I dance in front of it, and my dad could not be with this. My dad would say, "Stop dancing in front of the mirror. That's narcissistic, Adam." He just couldn't be with his son really loving dancing and wanting to like learn from witnessing himself. So I often think in my back of my head, I often have that like almost like a bit of a trigger for me, a bit of a sort of like, am I being narcissistic? Am I enjoying myself too much? And to be sure, there's a degree of like discernment to be had between learning to truly love ourselves and appreciate and admire our own greatness. Hey, Mia, good evening. And um, and being kind of swept away in ourselves, to be arrogant or caught up on ourselves. And I think the the way I discern that for myself is that when I'm really loving myself and have an appreciation for myself, there's a lack of fragility present. So back in the day, before any transformational work, I would dance, I would go to raves and I would dance, and I like really liked the way I danced, and I liked that people liked the way I danced, but all of that was very fragile. I couldn't allow anyone else to have the spotlight. If someone else was dancing at the party, I had to like challenge them. I had to take them down a peg. So there's a real fragility to that. Whereas I notice these days, um, from like a much deeper place of loving myself and my greatness, it actually allows me to appreciate others more because I am kind of filled up. So narcissistic approaches and tendencies for me tend to be ones where I'm looking to fill an internal void with external evidence or experience. If I get enough compliments from people, then I'll feel comfortable about my dancing. And that's kind of narcissistic in its approach. Whereas if I really can like appreciate my own greatness and the stuff I bring into the world that's beautiful and love myself for that, then I don't need to bring other people down a peg. I'm confident, I'm secure in who I am being, and that allows me to have room to honor and acknowledge and appreciate who other people are being. Oh, anyhow, still there. That trigger and that hook are still present for me, but it all began because of the window by my parents' dining room table. Let's have a simultaneous sip of tea together. We've got this tiger mug today. It's a pleasing shape of mug. It's like, what do you call that? Convex on the sides? No, that'd be concave. It's pleasing. It fits my hand well. This black is smooth. It says Starbucks on the back, but I don't have to show that. I can just show you this cool ass tiger. It's two-tone. It's a good mug. It's a good mug, and by gum, it's good tea as well. Well, it's the Friday before I get on a plane and head off to Costa Rica, the rich coast. I'm heading down there to sit in ceremony again. We have about 6 people coming down and joining us with this particular trip. So Bay and myself are going down. A number of Bay's clients are coming this time, along with some former members of the Forge. Sitting in ceremony is not a part of the Forge in any way currently. We find a lot of value in it, and we're looking to how we might be able to create that experience. But right now, there's no required component that involves ayahuasca or plant medicine of any sort. But as we share about what's happening and how it goes and our experience, people tend to like want to come join us. And so, yeah, we've got a good number of people coming down. My feeling currently about it is fairly like I think the word would be ambivalent. I know it's going to be a powerful experience, but often for me, I have like the way I experience travel and stuff is that up until I arrive, I'm kind of like, whatever. I don't have a lot of anticipatory excitement that shows up or anticipatory nervousness. I usually start to get nervous like the day of or the day right before. We still have a few days before stuff starts to kick off. So I'm kind of like, all right, well, that's going to happen. Let's make sure we get everything done. Let's make sure I trim my eyebrows on my nostril hair and my ear hair because I don't want to be in ceremony having those things poke me in the nose. That would be terrible. Just terrible. Mm. This week, Bay and I have been floating it up on our one wheels. Bay's one wheel arrived on Thursday. Was it Thursday? No, it arrived on Wednesday. It was scheduled to arrive on Tuesday. We were all excited. We were like, all right, it's going to come. And then, Bay will be able to practice and I won't have to like stand there. I'll be able to get on my one wheel and float around next to her. And it didn't come. That's the worst. The post was like, it's coming this day. Don't you worry. And then we were like, it's coming this day. And then it doesn't come. Definitely had anticipation that day. And so last night we went out to a school and got Bay going around the basketball court. And it's cool. I'm noticing there's like some ontological leadership I want to share in this, and also some of the upshot of the sexual yoga we practiced together. So a one wheel is a bit of a scary device until you get an intuitive feel for it, and then it becomes very like intuitive. It's sort of like walking. Walking can be kind of scary if you don't really know about it, right? Someone's like, just lean forward until you feel like you're going to fall, and then your foot is going to step forward to catch you. And just keep doing that. You'd be like, what? I'm perpetually falling? That's bonkers. So the one wheel, hey, Maria, nice to see you. Feels like it's been a while. The one wheel works by when you put enough of your weight onto the forward foot pad, it detects that and it speeds the wheel up. It accelerates the device to get the wheel back underneath you so that it's aligned with your center of gravity. And as you put your weight on the back foot pad, it slows the wheel down to bring it back underneath you. And so when you're going really slow, it's a little wobbly because you don't have enough speed, much like a bike. A bike is really hard to ride if you're going very slowly. But if once you speed up, you can actually ride without your hands. It tends to become very stable because of the gyroscope effect. So this is how the one wheel works. So it's a little bit scary. And as you are starting to learn, the first thing that I taught Bay was how to get off. So we taught her just jump off with both feet. As soon as you're scared, jump off. You really want to get good at that so that you can always escape a situation rather than like flailing around. And so as we've been teaching her, working together for Bay to learn this, I've noticed what'll happen is she'll start to like not be able to do something. Like she starts to drift in a direction and she's like, I don't know how to turn. And then she immediately jumps off. So panic takes over. She gets scared. She gets freaked out. And we can really see this. Bay was the womb in which she was birthed. Her mother's womb was a womb that was filled with a lot of adrenaline, panic, and angst. It was not a comfortable home. It was not a safe space. There was a tremendous amount of drama, and like this is not a criticism of anyone, not Bay's mom, not the surrounding people, just acknowledging the nature by which Bay came onto this planet. And so she kind of came onto this planet flushed with adrenaline, flushed with that panicky sense, and that I got to get out of here, and yet I can't. And so that naturally manifests itself as she's moving forward. As soon as she feels she's in a situation she can't escape, jump off the one wheel. So that's kind of like part of Bay's bringing that she brings into this thing. And then for me, what I notice is there's this desire for her to like get it sooner, because that's part of what I learned was like, don't struggle. That's a bad thing. Figure it out. And then you will get accolades. You will get loved. You will get praised, and people won't pity you or try to fix you. Oftentimes my experience getting supported by my parents was like, I wasn't getting supported to do it my way or to learn how to do things my way. I was getting like corrected. And that's not, I didn't enjoy that. I didn't like feeling corrected. Maria, please tell me what you realized. If you'd share in the chat, then I'll presence it for us. Thanks for getting whatever you just got. And so Bay has this sort of on this one wheel, she's learning and she's panicking, jumping off. And then that meets almost like lock and key that connects with my stuff, which is like, we should be getting there sooner. There's less tempo, there's less time for me here. And one of the things that we've been continually practicing together in our sexual yoga practice in the morning is learning to move at the pace of our own body's tempo. So the way my kind of, I guess we could call it strategy works is that I forego my tempo. There's a pace at which I'm naturally learning things, and in my head, from what I learned, is sort of like where I end up is, fuck that tempo. I should already be there. Speed up, speed up. So I run past my own tempo. And what Bay does is rather than stay the course so that she can learn, she jumps out. So she kind of just, rather than tune into her own tempo, she just runs away. And so neither of us can really learn our own tempo in that. And so it's beautiful. We're practicing this thing where both of those strategies are kind of coming head to head, bumping into each other. Let's have a sip of tea here. And what happens is because Bay starts to veer a particular direction or the turn's not working for her, she starts to panic and jumps off. She never actually learns how to correct because she doesn't stay the course. In order to learn how to correct, you kind of got to stay with it and sit in that panic until you start to breathe again and like come back and then, oh, wow, I actually can turn out of this. And then you can do it a little bit sooner next time, a little bit sooner. But if you always jump off, you never actually go through the thing. This is very much the nature of transformation, is that we as humans jump out as soon as things get confronting enough. And as a result, we never go through the confrontation to discover our own resourcefulness. So it's kind of cool because in our sexual yoga practice, we're practicing at a very like simple level. When you practice meditation, you are practicing being with life exactly as it is, doing as little as possible. You can practice being with life doing anything. I can go about living my life polishing rocks and practice like being who I am innately while I do this activity. But when you're meditating, you're taking all of the other stuff off of the picture and you're just like, can I be with life exactly as it is while I do nothing more than sit and breathe? And in sexual yoga, we're practicing that with two bodies. So I sit across from Bay, we connect with each other's left eye, I breathe for both of us. She allows herself to feel everything she's feeling for both of us. So my job is to ground us, anchor us in the breath. Her job is to open us up to the feeling of the moment. That's a polarity-based practice, right? I'm holding the alpha practice, the transcendent kind of consciousness. I bring the depth to our practice, and Bay brings the embodiment to our practice. And as we do that, we notice moments where like I'm breathing and I want Bay to drop in deeper with me, but she's not ready there yet. And then I get confronted by my like, fuck, the practice is going the wrong way. It should be different, et cetera, et cetera. And in our practice, that's the opportunity for me is to breathe and like, oh, wait, I'm rushing our tempo. Okay, let's breathe for both of us. Let's ground us back in here. So that simple sexual yoga practice that we work on with our teachers and practice each morning, I'm noticing how it shows up in something as seemingly completely unrelated as working with my partner to help her learn to do this super badass, super cool sport called one wheeling. Funny that way. Maria is saying she's been in New York City for 6 weeks. Cool. I love New York City. Which parts have you been in? I often think when people share that they're in New York City, I usually think Manhattan, but there's so many different boroughs and aspects to New York City, so many different places. I really like Brooklyn a lot. I find it very charming. Actually, in general, I find New York is quite a beautiful city. There's a lot I like about it, a lot of character and stuff. That's probably not that interesting, like not that original for me to share that, but when we first came to New York, Bay and I, the first time we visited, we were quite surprised. We were expecting like just another giant city, like the most giant of the giant cities, but instead we were like, wow, it's really, really charming. Okay, well, we have a ton of topics. Thank you everyone for sharing what you did. I'm just going to do some shout outs right now. All of these people were generous enough to provide topics today. David Medina, Sherifat Suleiman, Anna Huvile, Alexandra Serediach. I think it's a CH when we're Slavic, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I've got that wrong, Alexandra, and Corey Anchor. So thank you everyone for these suggestions you've made. They're really, really juicy, and I'm looking forward to talking to them. talking to them. I'm looking forward to talking to these suggestions, but also talking about them, also addressing them. So we'll start with David's because his goes back a ways. He asked this last week after we'd finished. David asks, let's see if I can bring this over here so I'm a little closer to the camera where I'm looking. David asks, Adam, could you speak on our relationship to our parents? As we do our work and notice how as we get older there is more resignation, at least in my parents, how do we relate to that heartbreak and trust and be at peace with holding that their path is perfect and doesn't need to be different? How do we hold those two together? How can we experience, that ongoing interaction with an open heart? Hey, Rajan, it's lovely to see you. Of course you may listen. This is live. This is publicly available. It'd be weird if I singled you out. This is a live show for everyone. Rajan, you are not allowed to come. I was reflecting, Tante Rajan is Bay's aunt, as Bay says, and lives in a beautiful part of Quebec. And just about a year ago, we were over there breaking bread, drinking good beer, seeing all of the gorgeous leaves in Quebec that turn a beautiful orange and red and yellow color. I miss Quebec. I want to come back. So welcome. Thank you for being here, Rajan. And Rajan, an ongoing joke for us was she promised us a good day guaranteed. We spent the day with them and she promised a good day guaranteed. And she delivered. So let's have a good show, good live show guaranteed, and we'll deliver on it. So, right, David has asked, talk about the relationship with our parents. And what David's speaking to here is, let me get a fan going. It's a little bit warm. Heating up. It's getting spicy in this office. I'll just put that there. All right. So what David's talking to is that, well, a couple things happen. Let's talk about just aging in general first. So as we age, the natural tendency for human beings is to contract from the world. This is like kind of the way the floor is tilted. We, absent input into the system, absent taking on some kind of work, absent generating something different, we naturally contract. And it's not even that we don't think, oh, I'm so stoked, I'm contracting from the world, I'm shrinking the size of the world I work with. Awesome. We don't think that at all. What happens is that our best attempts to like make life better for ourselves are almost always inevitably contraction. They're moving away from being with the world. And the way this works is that we grow up and we reach a degree of adulthood, maturity. We'll say like in our 30s, thereabouts. You're always growing, but it's not really the point. And what happens once we reach that point in life is there's certain things we've learned we can be with, and there's certain things we can't be with. I don't like it when people are rude. When people talk loudly on their phone in an airport, fuck those people and fuck anyone that looks like those people. So what I mean by looks like those people is anyone talking loudly on their phone on the bus, anyone using their phone with the volume turned up in the car, anyone walking down the street looking at their phone and not paying attention. So these would all be like, they're not necessarily the same thing, but for this particular person we're using as an example, they're all examples of that energy that person doesn't like. And so what that person does in their life is slowly but surely they figure out better and better ways to remove those people from their lives. So like, I don't take the bus anymore because I'm sick and tired of people being on their phone talking loudly. And I've started paying extra money so I can sit in the luxury lounge at Air Canada, because that way there's no people around there. And when I take the ferry from Victoria to Vancouver, I pay extra money to sit in the quiet spot so that blah, blah, blah. And I go and read. I do my reading in the morning at the library where you're not allowed to have a phone. So what's happening is, one, they cannot be with this kind of energy. Two, they arrange the circumstances of their life such that that kind of energy no longer is able to show up. So you could think of it kind of like if life is abundant and infinite in its scope, these people build a bit of a wall to keep out some of that abundance. Some of the abundance includes people that have their volume turned up for whatever reason, that are talking loudly on their phone for whatever reason. I can't be with that. I will shut that out. And so every single time we do that, what we're doing is shrinking from a bit of the abundance of life. It doesn't occur that way, right? It occurs like, yeah, my life is easier It's simpler for me to get my work done. I'm no longer, stuck having to like manage their loud volume. Now I can actually do the work I'm here to do. The transformational approach would be to notice our own trigger, to notice, oh, I've got like there's some energy around this kind of person for me. Like it triggers me. And to realize if I can do whatever the work is for me to do, such that that no longer has energy for me, such that those kind of people no longer trigger me, then I can actually get my work done regardless of how people are showing up around me. That's an expansive approach. That approach does not occur to us as available as shutting those people out of our lives, because when people are talking on their phone loudly, it doesn't seem like it's an us problem. It seems like it's a them problem. The problem is that they're rude. The problem is not that I have a hard time being with people that are on their phone. I have this hard time, by the way. It's annoying for me. It's a trigger, and it's a practice. This doesn't mean you have to take on every little annoyance and figure out how to be okay with it. That's not the game either. It's not like you should learn how to be okay with people kicking dogs. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just inviting us all to notice that our default, and by and large, the approach we always take, is one of contraction. And if we want to, we can always justify why contract. We always have a good reason for why contract. And so if we want to expand more and more as we age, or at least kind of push back against that tilted floor I'm talking about, we have to recognize, even though I'm going to be able to justify pushing this experience out of my life, in order to expand, I'm going to have to really make an effort to set aside my righteous justification and instead come here and say, what is it about this that I can't be with? And what are they reflecting by how they're showing up in me? What can't I be with in myself? What can't I let myself do? How do I diminish myself kind of opposite the way they expand themselves? So that's a whole bunch of prefacing to say, inevitably, our parents are further on in their lives than us, and they have contracted more than us. And they are also walking a very similar path to us. We learned from our parents. They taught us. The job of children-ish, or at least maybe the opportunity would be a better way to put it, is to become a little more conscious than our parents were. And in doing so, over time, we as humans on this planet, like as beings on this planet, can elevate the collective consciousness of this planet. Jess, it's nice to see you. Let's talk. Why don't you send me, Jessica's asking, will I go back to Rhythmia in December? That's when she hopes to go back. Yeah, I will. So send me a message. Let's chat. Let's coordinate dates. I would love to find a time to do that together. I'm actually planning to go in December. So one of the things that happens is we look to our parents and we see the places where they've contracted from life. Oh, there's one more thing I have to mention, which is every time we contract from life, we don't, again, it doesn't occur like we've contracted. It occurs very satisfying. It occurs like we've kind of figured life out. Ha! I no longer have to deal with those fucking idiots. Ha! I don't use any social media and I don't have to be around people's drama. That's great. Part of life is dramatic. Just watch any planet Earth thing and watch wild animals interacting with each other. There's a lot of drama, a lot of mundanity too, but there's a lot of drama. So part of life is drama. Part of its abundance is drama. So what happens is as we contract more and more from life, we become more justified in that decision. We become more kind of, hell yeah, I did the right thing. And what happens is because we've contracted away from more of life, our world becomes smaller. There's less that we have to really be with, but there's also less available to us. And that's the resignation David's talking about. We become empowered in this choice, but we are also resigned that this is as big as life can get. This is what is available to me. And then 10 years later, this is what is available to me. And it doesn't sound like resign. It rarely sounds like, oh, woe is me, if only. It sounds more like, oh, I would love to do that, but it's just not possible. And then a really well-reasoned list of reasons why it's not possible that makes complete sense given the world someone has created around them. And so when we look to our parents 20, 30, 40 years down the path from us, we see the choices they've made, we see what could be possible for them, and we see the resignation that they're empowered in. And we're like, come on, your life could be so much more. And we get frustrated. We get heartbroken. We're heartbroken because the possibility we can see and the life that they're actually living, there's a gap, which is heartbreaking. And so David's asking, how do we be with that? How do we love them? How do we be okay? How do we just be with that without needing to change them? And many children try to change their parents. I did for a long time. I had judgments that they could have done things better or should be doing things better. It's taken a long time to work through this. And it still shows up from time to time. It's kind of a natural state of us as human beings. Ideally, we can work through that before our parents pass on, because then we can at least be with them from a different place, but not always. Some people harbor that their parents should have been different for the rest of their lives. That's really tragic. So how do we be with this? There's a couple things. The first is to recognize we're doing the same thing our parents are doing. We're contracting from life. Inevitably, we are in a state of contraction. That's like what you could call ontological entropy. The being, our being, and entropy. The state of entropy is sort of like how everything in the universe moves away from an ordered state to a disordered state. Over time, the universe becomes more and more chaotic and randomized. This is a highly ordered set of molecules and atoms. Long enough into the future, this will no longer be available. It'll just be random atoms without any sort of cohesion or anything like that. Ontological entropy is like the natural state of us moving from a state of being open to stuff to being more and more contracted, to the world becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so we are doing the same thing. And it can be really helpful. It can provide a lot more compassion for our parents if we can start to discover the places where we're showing up the same way. Where am I contracting? Here's how that goes. Is first, when people hear this, they're like, well, I'm not. Or they're like, well, and then they list like 2 places or 3 places where they're like, well, I know I'm doing here, here, and here, but I'm okay with that. Ha. Way to go. You defeated what I'm providing. Instead, the opportunity is to discover something new. And discovery only happens in our blind spot. To discover something, we have to already not know it's there. I think that's the way I want to word that. And so we have to sort of begin. It can be helpful to take like, do I have stickies here? Yeah. A sticky and write, where and how am I contracting? Not am I contracting? That's not a very interesting question because you'll just say, yes, and blah, 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 end of inquiry. Where and how am I contracting just like my parents do? And then stick it on your monitor right there. Bam. Stoop. And what that does is it serves as a reminder to jog you out of the unconscious, ordinary life as normal that all of us are caught in. We just go about our day. We're not naturally looking, oh, here I'm doing that thing. Here I'm doing that thing. Generally speaking, we're fairly unconscious throughout our day, which is why a reminder somewhere to kind of jog us into lucidity can be really helpful. So we can start doing that. And if you practice this with some commitment, if you really put a sticky there, if you set a reminder on your phone a couple times a day to check in, eventually over time, you're going to start to have this experience that looks like this. You're doing stuff and you're like, fuck. And that fuck is you discovering, oh shit, I'm doing that thing that I'm judging them for. Here's a place where I'm contracting. And as you discover that, it's quite natural initially to have some shame, judgment, criticism, or guilt about it. I can't believe I do this thing. I'm so crappy. And the reason you will judge yourself that way is you already know it's true is because that's how you're judging your parents for being that way. So once you start to see it, the next step is to have some judgment naturally arise. And then from there, to bring compassion to that part of yourself. Judgment is the antithesis of compassion. And compassion is the antidote to judgment. Can I love myself for doing this? Can I see that I'm doing this from a pure, good, holy, reverential place? This isn't because I'm dumb. It's not because I'm stupid. There's a really valid, justified reason that I'm doing this. And if we can start to hold ourselves with compassion on the other side of that judgment, shame, guilt, criticism, whatever, if we can start to hold compassion here, then we can bring compassion there. Compassion and love is the state that you accept something exactly as it is. You don't resign yourself to it. You actually hold it. You get yourself to the place where you're like, this is perfect. There's no other way this should or could be. This is a beautiful place where I am. This is a beautiful way this person is showing up. That's what true love is. That's unconditional love. I see it and I accept it exactly as it is. And if we can start to do that for ourselves, and that's really the work, then we can start to bring that to our parents. It becomes very easy to see with our parents. We're like, oh man, I talk about all this consciousness I have and I'm doing this thing. Hello, Alexandra. Talking about all this consciousness and oh man, what a boner I am. And then they're doing it and I don't know what work they did, but like, man, if I'm doing it, how can I expect them to be doing anything any different? What that does is it gives us just a lot of capacity to be with things exactly as they are, to let our parents be exactly where they should be. And you know they're where they should be because that's where they are. So that's the best way that I found. And this doesn't just apply with our parents, this applies with anything. So that person that's talking loudly on their phone, that you're like, what a fucking asshole, they're so inconsiderate of people. Where and how are you inconsiderate of people? Oh, I do it in these places, but it's justified because blah, and then it's different here. This is why I do that, and blah, blah, blah. It's always justified. The justifications are relevant. Where and how are you being exactly the same way as that person? And then can you bring compassion to yourself once the judgment kicks up? You'll know you're in the process of discovery as opposed to knowing, because discovery is typically accompanied with judgment. And the way that works is when I know something, it's kind of allowed to exist in my consciousness. If I know that sometimes I cut people off in traffic because I'm in a hurry, then that's not going to really be one of those places where I'm like, it's not the same as discovering, oh my God, I can see, I just noticed I'm being the exact kind of way that I describe as a shithead in this moment. Fuck, Adam, you're such a shithead. Like when we catch something in our blind spot, the reason it's in our blind spot is because of all of our judgment in the first place. So when you discover this, naturally it'll be accompanied with a bunch of judgment. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking to catch yourself in a moment that drives up some judgment so you can then bring compassion to that judgment. That's where the freedom lies. That will open you up and you'll start to become more free in your own life. And then you'll also just have more room for these other people. I'll give you a fun example about my dad, who I have a great deal in common with, and I've learned a great amount from, and who I love a great deal. My dad, in my family, we have this joke about, my dad's name's Gavin, great name, great man. We have this joke that dad really likes to lecture. He'll say, what do you think about blah? Doesn't matter what you say. He's going to tell you what he thinks about blah. That's really the setup for this question. And he has some very intelligent opinions. He thinks about stuff. You know, it's neat to hear his opinion, but there's a lecture coming. You're going to get lectured. Here is what I think about blah. There's this time when my mom was telling me about this moment where they were at this party, and I think they were away somewhere for an event or whatever. Anyhow, they came back from the night, and my dad was so frustrated about this person, and they were walking along the beach. I don't know how much of this is accurate. The gist of the story is right. I don't know if they're actually walking on the beach, and he was frustrated. He was telling me, Mom, oh, that person is so annoying. He doesn't care what other people think at all, and he just wants to talk about his own opinion. It's so obnoxious. Mom told this story to my family, to my brother, myself, dad, her. My brother and I and my mom burst out laughing. So hilarious. And dad's got a great sense of humor. He can laugh at himself. I really learned a lot about that from him. So he could laugh a bit, but he couldn't quite see it. Or at least he certainly couldn't see it in the moment that this person was a total mirror for him. That's the nature of this stuff, right? Like we get so frustrated at that fucker and we can't see that fucker is a complete mirror for ourselves. And the interesting thing is that the way you are relating to that person is also a mirror for the way you are relating to this same part in yourself. So if that person who is sharing his opinions boldly and doesn't listen to anyone else, if you relate to that person as a fucker, then that part of you that is uninterested in other people's opinions and want to share stuff just loudly, you relate to that part of you as a fucker as well. And if you're relating to that part of you as a fucker, it's pretty hard to have compassion for it. We don't tend to have a lot of compassion for fuckers. Well, I don't, at least. And so that shows us sort of like, oh wow, there's a part of me here that really is available. Like there's some real opening for me to do, some real compassion to develop, some real freedom to let myself open up into, if I'm willing to do this hard work of looking internally rather than judging externally. Hello, Monica. Monica says, this is so true, and I know this, but it is, all caps, so hard to practice this with parents. It is. Our parents are the hardest for us to practice with because they're so close to us, because they raised us. They provided, like, we learned our survival mechanism from them. So, like, our strategies when we're confronted, our blind spots are a function of part of what we learned from them and their blind spots, which, by the way, this goes all the way back, right? They learned it from their parents, from their parents. And like, our parents and our children and our siblings, those are like the best places to practice and the most challenging. That's the double black diamond place to practice, ontological leadership. And Alexandra is sharing, wow, this is gold. Judgment creates blind spots. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Yeah, that's as we judge something, we develop a vested interest in not seeing ourselves show up that way, because otherwise we just walk around thinking we're a piece of crap. We'd be all we'd be out of consistency with ourselves. There'd be no internal coherence. So that's how you practice with your parents. All right, Alexandra, you're here, so I'm going to speak to your question. Alexandra wrote, I would like to hear about your doubts about your own work if you want to share. I always want to share. What are the thoughts and fears that you want? Let me just make sure I got this. Oh, I see. What are the thoughts and fears, Adam, that sort of make you want to talk yourself out of being a leadership coach? So, like, what are my doubts and fears that sort of move me out of would turn me away from the work that I do in the world? And Monica, just as a side note, is sharing, I judge you for being judgy. Yeah, that's a favorite of mine too. I judge people for their judgment. That took a long time to start to see and be like, oh wait, that's hilarious. I'm judging people for being judgmental. Huh. So fascinating. Can you see something there for yourself, Adam? Nope, not really, because this is different than their kind of judgment. For me, it's different. I'm judging them for being judgmental. Oh, hold on. So what are the fears, doubts I have that would talk me out of my work? Like, what kind of moves me away from my work? So, like, the really easy ones to share that probably aren't, they're like a little more general, and then I'll try to come a little more specific. But the easy ones would be like the part of me that just wants to eschew all responsibility in my life and just fuck around. Like there's a total party boy in me who would like to get high, get drunk, play video games, masturbate, and then I get to enjoy an orgasm without having to deal with any burden of anyone else. Eat calories and then like lay around and maybe have new novel entertainment come to me now and then. That's a real part of me that just, there's a pull for that where it's just like, the yoke of responsibility. I have to get up at 6 a.m. I have to go to bed at 10 at night. I have to watch what I eat, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a part of me that kind of fears the being trapped, or like the losing of some of my freedom, or like the like feeling like imprisoning myself. I don't want any of that. I just want to keep my life super spacious and free. Like a super teenage part of me, right? You can feel that energy. It's very teenager. I want to have the world bring me oysters and clean up my room for me. I want my mom to clean up my room for me. And I don't want to have to worry about what I eat. I want that free teenage body where you just get like 6-pack abs for eating 12 donuts every single day, and that's what I want. So that's not even so much a fear or a doubt, although I guess the fear or doubt is like I'm going to lose my freedom or I'm going to become trapped, and therefore, I pull back towards that. And that guy shows up, especially at the end of like, the month off Ben I take, December and June, at the end of those months, that guy is like, yo, we gotta make the most of this last remaining days of freedom. So often before I like reinstitute a lot of structure in my life or kind of come back to sort of working momentum, I can get a little destructive. I can eat poorly, drink a lot, stay up late, play a lot of video games, that sort of stuff. Um, I often, a lot of my, I can get afraid that I'm not, there's a flavor of sort of like, who am I to do this that will show up from time to time around, well, there's wherever I'm currently comfortable playing, right? There's the game and the level of life I'm currently comfortable at, and then there's like the next level. There's always going to be the next level, right? So I'm coaching these people now, but then the next level is to coach multi-billionaires, and then the next level there would be to coach only the presidents of countries, and the next level there would be to coach Jesus or whatever. So there's always going to be a next level though. Then I'll coach neutron stars after that. So anytime I'm stepping up to the next level, there's that like, who am I? I'm not impactful. I don't make a difference, blah, 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 blah. And the way that fear shows up for me is like, it's basically intimidation. And then from my intimidation, I try to like pull those people down. So I start picking them apart and like, look at the way their suit fits them, or what a stupid thing to say, or yeah, they talked about that with leadership, but this is how I would do it. There's sort of like a stinginess. There's an unwillingness for me to give them any credit whatsoever because I'm hanging on to like, here's why I'm right and have the right answer and fuck them. So when I get into that place, there's no like collaboration. There's me versus them because I'm intimidated by what they've created, and I their greatness calls into question my own. It becomes harder for me to see my greatness in those spaces, and then so like from that place, knock them down. I can't see my own light, so if I dim all the lights around me, then I'll be able to better see mine. It's not a very, it's not a great, it's not really like the impact I'm committed to having in the world, but that fear shows up. So that's like the fear, doubt, I'm not enough. Who am I to do this? I don't have an impact. I don't make a difference. And then that's a little bit some of like the strategy that I learned to create to kind of manage that fear a bit. My work, of course, is to bring that to my coach so I can distinguish it and then come back to like, what do I want to create with this person? And what do I need to start to get present to my greatness once again so I can stop feeling like stop challenging someone else's, so that I can hold all of our gifts together. Um, Whenever we're holding, like we've just started the Forge this year. It starts in September, so we're off. We've had 3 calls, and anytime we have a new batch, what inevitably happens is you bring 26 people together, and they're present to like the possibility of transformation and taking on their lives and all that stuff. That's just going to be a confronting experience. Hell, you bring people together in a party, that's going to be a confronting experience. Hey, 24 people, you don't know each other yet, mingle, talk amongst yourself. We're going to get confronted naturally. Maybe some people not, but like almost all of us on some level. And so that's by design. That's what's meant to happen. And my job and Bay's job, and then our leadership team, and then our leadership team below that, and then participants, our job is to be with all of that confrontation, notice how it confronts us, because it does. To be with something to be with someone that is confronting it. Hold on, let me get the right words. To be with someone who is confronted is confronting. So we get confronted, and our job is to be a little more conscious. Our job is to be able to expand our being, our capacity to be with, and hold everyone in their confrontation without making them wrong, without needing to change them, without taking it personally, and instead just let them be exactly the way they are and love them. That's hard. That is a tremendous amount of energy to hold. And when we do that, we're humans. So it's not that you reach a point in leadership where you stop getting confronted. Well, I mean, you can. The way you get there is you just continue to play the same game once you've arrived. I don't want to play any bigger game. Great, that's okay. You've now moved from leadership into management. You're optimizing and making more efficient. That's okay, that's a fine game. It's just different from leadership. But if you're practicing leadership, you're always going to discover new places where you're confronted. And so we get confronted, we get frustrated, and yeah, we sometimes get like, these people, they're not showing up the right way. And we're like, hold on, we're confronted. Okay, what do we need? Maybe some acknowledgement, maybe some love, maybe a reminder that we're doing the right stuff, whatever it is. And that's why we have a lot of support around us because we're holding the space for all of these people. And in those moments when I get confronted, there is like a part of me that's like, fuck this. I'll just stop doing, maybe I won't do this next year. I'll just stop doing this and I'll work with one-on-one with a bunch of people and that's all I'll do. Be easier. It would be easier. It would be a much like, there would just be less confrontation for me to be with. But on a, well, so that's the fear. That's how my fear sort of shows up. Like, I got to go through with this. I'm going to not be liked. I'm not going to be enough. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? I get supported. And on the other side of working myself out, getting supported and moving beyond my confrontation, I can see, yeah, it would be easier without a doubt. It'd be much simpler, but I would be bored. And that's not what I'm committed to. Like I've decided to make what I'm making my life about right now, currently, is bringing more transformation into the coaching and the leadership professions. I'm really committed to that from like a deep, deep place. My fear rests atop that commitment. And so I got to notice that fear when it shows up, acknowledge it, set it aside so I can come back, maybe not even set it aside, just acknowledge it and like distinguish it. So I'm like, oh, there's some fear that would really be like, fuck this, I'm out. But there's a deeper commitment and I'm going to choose the commitment. And choosing the commitment doesn't mean the fear goes away. It just means that the fear sits there and I don't let it dictate my actions. And that's the work. So those are some of the thoughts and fears that sort of work to talk me out of the work that I've chosen to make my life about right now. Alexandra, she's sharing without, describing that experience of people getting confronted. And she's saying, without trying to save, in quotes, those who are confronted, probably. Yes, absolutely. So some of the energy that we can get sometimes is like, you're doing this wrong. This is what I need, and you're not providing it. That's a really common way to show up from confrontation, right? The problem's not that something is getting triggered in here, it's that the structure in question is not what I require. And so when that sort of thing shows up, one easy thing from confrontation is, fuck you, you're dumb. That'd be an easy one. The other one, the other side, because we usually have two ways we show up, broadly speaking, two generalized ways of showing up. One is to like attack, the other is to collapse. So the attack would be like, fuck you, you're dumb, closed heart, no openness. That's an easy thing to do from confrontation. And often coaches often call this being powerful. It's not very powerful. It's just being kind of brutal and closed and not very conscious. The collapse version would be, oh my God, they're saying that this structure is wrong. I should change the structure so that they feel okay. And that's not really, that's what happens when coaches, for example, adjust their rates over and over and over and over again so their client can always say yes. They're not allowing their client to be in the confrontation of wanting something and not yet seeing how to get it. Or like, that's more than I was expecting. Oh, don't worry, we'll pay less. So that's the challenge. We have to be able to stand for something. In this case, we're standing for what we've created in the Forge. And we're practicing trusting ourselves and standing in that in the face of people saying this should be different and not collapsing into it. Yeah, so good question, Alexandra. Thanks for asking that. Anna, I saw you'd shown up. Eat calories, great point to join. Yes. Anna asks, any best practices when people launch into a sermon about their brackets, strong beliefs, especially when we don't share them? That's funny, given what I shared about my dad. Like an acquaintance of mine regularly announces stuff like there's not going to be any international flights anymore or how the government is after us, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to argue or get bored with them. I would love to not have it be a purely transactional conversation. Something that comes to mind would be to get curious about how that feels for them, for example, but I'd love to hear more from you, Adam. Great question. So there's like two parts to this. The first question is, is given I have resistance to what's showing up, is this resistance I want to lean into? This kind of comes to where the first topic we had about like contracting, does that mean I have to open to everything in life? So for me, I find conspiracy theories really boring. They're uninteresting to me for a few reasons. Most of those are that I find they are very lacking in critical thinking. I find that the evidence is always flimsy and just around the corner, and just you wait, you're going to see more evidence, or look at all this evidence. And when you do look at it, you're like, that doesn't really hold much water at all. And it often feels like the way I used to feel about MUDs, or what are called massively multiplayer online role-playing games, which are these games that they never end. And it's always like, get the better sword so you can then kill the bigger monster to get better loot, which allows you to kill an even bigger monster, which will give you even better loot, and so on and so forth. That's how conspiracy theories often occur to me. It's like, just around the corner, there's going to be the real blowout evidence, kind of like this US election, the big lie in the US about the election being stolen. I've looked at that. It occurs to me as nonsense. And if you have a different opinion, that's fine. But I'm not really super interested in engaging in that because I don't find that that conversation really goes anywhere. It's a very circular conversation that just kind of goes around and around and around and around. And there's in my experience, a willful denial of like critical thinking and like good evidentiary reasoning. These are things that I really loved about the practice of law as a side note. I was like, I love argument, but what I don't like is so many people commit logical fallacies in argument. They move to ad hominem. They attack the person rather than the argument. They take it personal. They get frustrated. They do all this. Or they make up evidence and say this, therefore, and it's like that evidence doesn't even pertain. And what I loved about law school was like, no, buddy, that doesn't fit our evidentiary standard. You can't prove that. That is invalid. Therefore, that does not go into the argument. Now, law has a friggin' ton. Hey, Chrissy. Law has a friggin' ton of like flaws and stuff like that. So this is not to, toot law's horn, but that was part of what I loved about it. So I could take on as a practice going and sitting with conspiracy theorists and listening to them and like, how do I open? That could be something I could take on, but I'm not really going to because I'm just not interested in that. There are plenty of other places in my life where I'm actively committed to opening. That's not one of them. That does not occur that fruitful for me. However, if, for example, Bay started to get really into conspiracy theories, well, I have a deeper commitment there, which is to have a connected, open, loving relationship with my wife where we really get each other. And so in that situation, I would actually sit down and I would have to do some work and I would have to like listen below where I stop listening. I'd be like, what is it that my wife finds so compelling about this? Can you help me understand? Can you help me see this through your eyes? Can I understand this through her frame of reference? So that's the first fork in the road for us to consider, is whether it's conspiracy theories or whatever else someone is expounding upon, is this something I'm actually interested in like being with? Is this a friend that I really value who keeps doing this that I want to continue their friendship with? Or is this just the sort of thing where I'm like, look, I don't really have much, if my friends start to go off on conspiracy theories, they don't because they tend to be like-minded. But if they did, I would probably let them know, look, I don't have a lot of interest in conspiracy theories. And I further don't have a lot of capacity for it. I don't have a lot of patience for it. So I've got about 5 minutes, but then I'd like to move on. I don't want to keep talking about this. It's not interesting to me. I would just tell them that. Not because they're wrong for bringing it, but because I'm just taking ownership. That's where I stand on this matter. And so, I'm just going to increasingly check out. Now, if having looked through that lens, Anna, or anyone else, you then conclude, I actually do really want to practice with this here, then here's what I would probably be doing is I would look for where I could be curious. So what is it about this conspiracy that's so compelling for you? What are you left feeling, or how does this what does this change for you, this line of thinking? What are you hoping for? What's interesting for you about this? How does this change your actions? What do you do differently as a result of this? These aren't strategic questions. I'm not asking these to get somewhere. I'm asking because those would be something I'm interested in. The story about the conspiracy isn't very interesting to me, but I am interested in how it impacts that person, or what has them take a bite into it. What has them get hooked into that? What are they hoping for? I'm really fascinated by that. What else did you say here? Yeah, get curious about how it feels for them, for example. I sat with there was a guy I was sitting in ceremony with over the course of a week, and we were sitting together by the pool talking, and he started talking about Bitcoin, and I said like two sentences, and then he just started going off, like ranting, ranting about like the world and how it's shutting down Bitcoin and blah blah blah. And I was like, you know that energy where it's like a fire hose, and you're like, pretty hard to really harmonize with this in any way. Like, what do I do? And I sort of just sat while he was ranting. I wasn't really paying too much attention to what he had to say, like the content of the rant, but I was like, boy, this guy seems angry. Seems really frustrated. And so when he finished, I said, I might have even interrupted him. I said, how is that for you? It sounds really frustrating. And he was like, oh, it's infuriating. And I wouldn't always do this, but because of the context where we were, I just asked like, huh, is that a common experience for you? It's a bit of a coaching question. He was like, yeah, totally. Like, I'm always frustrated with the way the world's showing up. And I was just like, huh, interesting. Now, we could have broadened that conversation. We could have gone somewhere, but that's a much more interesting conversation for me. Like, I'm curious about that frustration. I'm curious about how that is for him. I'm curious about what he does as a result of being frustrated. Those are things I'm really interested in. The content about whether we should or should not switch to Bitcoin, that's interesting for a while. I find cryptocurrency an interesting subject, but it kind of falls away from me at that point. So, and then the last thing Anna says is, I suspect someone like them doesn't feel truly gotten on a deeper level very often. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that my experience is a lot of people that kind of um, go into sermons are people that often have an experience of not being listened to, not being gotten. Because you can do this experiment, this thought experiment for yourself. Imagine someone, maybe you know them, maybe you don't, that tends to do a lot of lecturing, a lot of sermonizing. Maybe you're thinking of me. And then think to yourself, what is the impact on me when I'm around that kind of person? Like, what do I want to do in those moments? And for me, there's a couple of things. I want to walk away from them. I want to tune them out. I want to correct them, or I want to tell them to shut up. And if I don't do any of those, that's still what I want. That's still the energy here. And so that energy is going to come forward one way or the other. Probably I'm going to have my eyes glaze over, and I'm going to start looking around. And when they finish, I'm going to try to change the topic. All of these are manifestations of, fuck, this is not what I'm interested in. This is boring. And so, of course, the way that person's showing up ends up creating the experience that people aren't interested in hearing them. And so then you can imagine, well, when you are afraid that, or have an experience that people don't really listen to you and tune you out pretty quickly, what would you try to do from there? Well, one of the things you might try to do is pack in as much content as you can before people switch off. And so like the one begets the other, begets the other, begets the other. It's like an arms race, right? And so to your brilliant distinguishing, Anna, they probably haven't really had much of an experience of being heard. And if this is a person you're committed to like connecting with more deeply, then really listening to them can be really valuable, really hearing them. Anna's writing in the comments here, great point about the inquiry within myself in the first place and setting some boundaries, which I sometimes don't quite do. And yeah, there's subjects other than conspiracy theories where I would like to deepen the practice of getting them. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Great question. So this is always a bit of the dance once we start to become committed to our own transformation is, I know I can always justify why not open here. And having said that, that doesn't mean that I have to open and be with everyone no matter how they're showing up. And that's the tightrope of discernment. We're always walking between those two things. Is this someone I let in even more? Or is this a place where I'm actually just not that interested? Or where do we go? Thanks, Rajan. Rajan saying, good point. Okay, well, let's talk about Sherifat. Sherifat's asked us a couple of questions. Hi, Sherifat. Oh, she always catches this on the replay. She's not here with us right now, I don't think. Sharifat says generosity. Can you talk about generosity, Adam? Why do I always feel that there's a limit to giving? My fear is that I'm giving away all my secrets. For example, if I give all the ways I have to make a profit to a customer, then how will I make my profit? How will I do this? So I think what Sharifat means when she says, when she talks about a limit to her giving, it's sort of like she can be generous to a point, but then, there's a point by which she feels like she can't go anyway, all the way. So, well, you're right. There is a degree to which, like all of these qualities are kind of funny, because one thing that people who bring the quality of who embody generosity, they can fall down one path, which is just I must give and I must give and I must give. And one of the things you'll notice is that there is an abundance of everything in the world, and that includes an abundance of people that would benefit from you giving to them. So trying to give to the point where you've given enough is a fool's errand. You can never do that. You will never be able to give enough that the world or the people around you representing the world are like, well, we got it all, thanks. Now it's your turn. That'll never, ever happen. And further, the more you give to people, no matter what, the more people are trained by you that you have more to give them. And so then they will come to you asking for more. They will rely on you more and more and more. So what happens is when people bring the energy of generosity just into like in terms of who they be in the world, if that's part of their essence, they can go down this path, sort of like giving and giving and giving and giving, and end up feeling like martyrs. Fuck, I give, I give, I give, and it's never enough. And the truth about that is, and it never will be. Literally, that's true, that it'll never be enough. There is never enough generosity. Never, ever. That is a fundamental baked-in property of the universe. That is reality. So one, it can be helpful for us to kind of recognize that. Oh, if I'm giving hoping there is a point I will reach at which point there is no more to give, that's a setup for me, and that's going to lead to martyrdom. Martyrdom being where people give beyond their own kind of best interests. It's a simple definition for you. So if I keep giving to you, eventually what happens is I'm like, handing you the food on my plate when I'm starving and emaciated, and you're like, thanks, that's so delicious. But that food, being given something from that place, never feels that good, and often is accompanied with resentment and stuff like that. So one, we've got a limit to generosity. The other interesting thing that happens is as someone who is generosity does that a whole bunch, eventually they reach this point where their resentment builds up more and more and more, because they're like, screw this world, they keep taking, and then they tend to swing all the way over to the other side, which is, it's never my turn. People never seem to care about me. They just want me to give and give and give. They project the problem onto the people outside of themselves rather than looking inwards. So you know what I need to do? I need to just come to terms with the fact that I should get my own first. And there's a truth to this. We have to fill our own cup before we give to others. But what happens is they come to this truth through resentment, through a fuck you, and through a belief that the problem is external rather than internal. And so what then happens is they actually swing over to the other side and become very selfish. You end up with these people who are like their soul is very generous, and yet the way they act is incredibly selfish. Snatchy, clutchy, that's my toy. You can't have that. That's mine. And we're kind of caught off guard by this. We're like, oh, weird. She was like giving me the shirt off her back, but then, oh, strange. And then we're left kind of unsure how to be around these people. So this is the pendulum swing I'm describing. The next thing that Sharifat says is like, why do I always feel there's a limit to giving? My fear is that if I give out all my secrets, like I share all the ways I make profit to a customer, then how do I make it? So there's a really interesting book. It's a bit dense, but it's called Finite Games versus Infinite Games. I'll just put it in the comment here. Actually, I can do better. Amazon.com, finite and infinite games. Just get you guys a link. Do I want to push you to Amazon.ca? Yes, I do. Oh, it said, sorry, we couldn't fetch the page. Here's a picture of a dog. I think I've got the page now. Great. So we'll put this in the chat here for y'all. Pow. So the author of Finite versus Infinite Games makes this distinction, which is there are two games we can play, and life is a game. The first game is a finite game. A finite game has like an end result, and there tends to be like a winner and a loser. There, you get to the end and you're like, yes, I got this. I have the most points, whatever. An infinite game is infinite in scope. It never ends. It's ongoing. So most of us, like in a tournament, for example, there's this idea of like the tournament is a finite game. I play the people, and then at the end, if I've won, I win, and the game is over. And there is no more need for me to continue to try to improve. That game has finished. Now there's maybe more tournaments, but never mind that for now. So in that situation, let's say I'm talking about squash. If I have a secret shot that I've perfected, then it's in my best interest to hide that from all my opponents and not teach them about it so I can keep beating them with it. What'll happen is in that finite game, I have this advantage. I won't give it over to other people, and that'll allow me to win the finite game. In an infinite game, where there is no end, all there is for us to do is just like, hey, I just want to keep getting better and better and better. Keeping my secret shot to myself is actually detrimental. If I keep it to myself, no one is ever going to understand how to defeat it, and therefore I will never be called to improve my game past this secret shot I've mastered. I'll do it and I'll win every time, and people will never learn, and then we will stay static. So in an infinite game, often what we're called into is like, how do I keep deepening? How do I go further? You could also think of these things in the lens of scarcity versus abundance. So a finite game has a degree of scarcity. There's only so many points. There can only be so many winners. There's only so much time. Whereas an infinite game is abundant. There's as many winners as possible. So in a game like, well, I hold, let me just get the words for this because I'm starting to get into some complicated territory. I want to try to simplify this for us. So the question Sharafat's asking is, if I give out all the ways to make profit to a customer, then how will I make the profit? That's kind of a finite game she's playing, right? I need to hold on to these ways because otherwise people will figure them out and then I will lose the game of making profit and I will lose the game of entrepreneurial making money. And that's honestly how like a lot of the world is set up, right? Intellectual property, and I need to master this, and I need to set up patents so that you can't do the same thing that I do. That's all quite finite. It's not quite that simple. I'm generalizing quite a bit, but let's not worry about that. You'll notice for a lot of my content, I just give it away free, and I share a lot of stuff with people, and I invite them to like share it, make it their own, do whatever they want with it. I could care less. My belief being that when I do that, other people will take it and improve upon it. And then it'll come back to me and that'll call me forward to benefit and to grow and to take on what's next. That's only possible in an infinite game, a world of abundance. So that's the place I would invite Sharafat to look, is like, oh, what is the benefit of playing a finite kind of game here? Like, okay, if there's only so much profit and so on and so forth, then what happens if I give away my secrets? Well, then other people start to copy them, and then I'm not as distinct. What are the positives if there's an infinite number of ways to make profit? What are the positives if it isn't about a secret, but there's all these different ways, and there's a million more ways we haven't yet figured out? And in that abundance, in that infinite kind of game, we start to get to engage with questions like, well, if you did give out all your ways of profit to a customer, like if you told them these, what might be the impact on them? I would imagine that customers start to really trust you. Like, wow, my other clients, they don't tell me any of this, but Sharafat just tells me what her secret is. She's just revealing the cards in her chest. She's not holding them tight. She's just saying, this is what I'm up to. Are you interested in that? And that's the heart of brilliant coaching and leadership, is that we just let people in. We're not trying to trick you. Not trying to, like a good leader isn't trying to like hide something or manipulate you. They're telling you, this is what's on offer. This is why I'm standing for you this way. Do you still want that? And you are free to choose no. And down that path, we are creating a life of abundance. We are trusting that if I let this client say no and move on, there is another client that will be really excited about what I have to offer, and they will choose in from that place. And as a result, I will end up with clients that really love what I have to offer, rather than clients that kind of begrudgingly take it and then complain about what I have on offer. Hey, Alexandra, nice to see you. Have a great weekend. So that's what I would say. That's my answer to Sharafat's question. Mm, I've got two more questions and just enough time to nail each of them perfectly. How convenient. So Corey Anchor says, you just completed a book, Adam. Just the prospect of that kind of accomplishment might seem Herculean for most people. This guy quoting Greek and Roman studies. There must be a million pieces of brilliance in that book. How did you stay the course? Did you prep for it or just jump right in? What did you expect, and did those expectations happen? And what did you learn that you did not expect? So let's take these kind of one at a time. How did I stay the course? Um, so this book grew out initially. I wish there was a way to share my screen now that but I can't, so I can't show you. But initially I was creating these. Oh, I bet I can. I bet I can. Let's see if it's in my Rebrandly. Initially, this whole idea, let's get the book just so I can share it. This book right here, Who Do You Think You Are? It came into being because I was in Portland about 7 years ago, actively like in an addiction to pot, like getting stoned constantly, not really well, so to speak. And I was going to coffee shops and I was just playing around with Canva and another application, another app called Prisma, which allowed you to take photos and then kind of art them up. It was very cool. And let's see, I'm pretty sure, do I have? Oh man, I don't think I do. What a bummer. One of the essence of brilliance. Okay, well, what's this one look like? Taming Your Genius. Let's click that and see if that brings us anything. I was creating these documents that were like a bunch of pictures, and then I would take a quality of being and I would just label the good, the bad, the ugly, and the extraordinary. And then like kind of quickly label like connection, the good, connects easily with people. The bad can learn to become very introverted. The ugly can become like, what does connection do when it's hurtful? Can become the mean girl at a party. Extraordinary, social lubricant, right? These are just sort of those quadrants. And I was playing around with this and I really liked the graphic design aspect of it. And it gave me something fun to do while I was baked. And I started to create these for different qualities of being. And then as I did that, the idea for the book started to come forward. Initially, it was the spectrums of being. I had this idea like, oh, you could like a spectrum of how does this being show up in all these ways. And then eventually I got to the point where I was finishing all of the long editing of my first book, Too Smart to Know Better. I was tired of that book. I wanted that to be done. And I was like, man, I want this book. This is the one I really want to make happen. And so I was starting to write it. And what I was doing was to like stay the course. I had a friend, Ben Allen, who does a lot of like coaching for authors and runs a publishing house. And so I hired him and worked with him, and he supported me as things would go forward. Two, I shared a lot of what I wrote as I wrote it. This is another example to Sharafat's question, like how will I make profit if I give away my tricks? If you go back and look at my Facebook feed, so much of this book, so much of this fat book is posted. Not all of it, not in the same way, but a lot of it. I posted a lot of that stuff. And that always provided me like a bit of, what would the word be? Like, I don't know, it felt good to publish. I'd get feedback. People would be like, wow, this really resonates. You nailed me on this one. This feels really good. Oh my God, this is cool. I love this idea of shadows. So that was really encouraging. If I was just writing this book by myself without any feedback, that would have been much harder for me. Maybe for some people easier, but I was sourced by people responding and even by just getting to share, even if no one responded, which happened plenty of times too. Second, I had a writing practice in the morning. Every morning I would get up, I would lift weights, and then I would meditate and then sit down and start writing. That was my practice day in, day out. And there were a lot of days where that writing felt grueling. And I had a 1 hour timer and I was going to write no matter what. So I would do that. And sometimes I would just write bullshit and I'd have to go back and edit and be like, oh my God, what have I written here? My editor would go through some of the pieces. Permission in particular, the quality of being a permission. He was just like, I really got lost in this. I'm not sure. That was a mamma jamma to edit, but at least I got words on the page. So that was the That was really how I stayed the course. And then it didn't help to tell people that this was coming, and people would be like, I can't wait. When's the book out? When's the book out? That was encouraging too. Third, how did I stay the course? I brought it to my coach a lot. This book sucks. I hate it. I'm mad. I don't want to do this. I'm annoyed. I rarely had that the book sucked. It was more just like, oh, it's tedious. It's a slog. I'm tired. I don't want to write this. I'm not posting enough other stuff, so people aren't seeing my content enough. That kind of thing was showing up for me. Um, did I prep for it or just jump right in? I wouldn't say I prepped for it, and I wouldn't say I jumped right in. So what happened was again, like I kind of inadvertently done a bunch of prep for this book. And the other thing that happened was um, I kept bringing people like to ontological leadership conversations and coaching. Like I would work with my clients, I would support coaches, and they'd be like, I love this approach. I love this model. Is there a book I can read? And every time I would have to say, no, not really. You can read The Last Word on Power. It's really good, but it won't really help you understand this model. It'll just give you a bunch of powerful ways to look at your life. And you could read Speaking Being, where you can watch, kind of listen, read Werner Erhard directly working with people in this model, but again, it doesn't really give you much of a framework. Or you can go read like Heidegger and like these Greek philosophers, but that's dense as fuck and that's really hard. So I guess yes, but no. And that was frustrating to me that there was this incredibly powerful body of work that just hadn't really been distinguished in a way that I thought provided a bridge for people. You either had to be already die hard into it, you had to go train for a year plus, or you just kind of like worked with a coach and picked it up as you went along. I wanted something different. And so that really motivated me too. I was like, man, there's a hole here. This is the book I would like to have read. I want to provide that to people. And so that grew naturally out of the 12 years I've been in this work. I would start to see more and more stuff and like, boy, I got to write this down or copy this or put this somewhere. And Corey said, what did I expect? And did those expectations happen? Um, I expected that less people would put their hand up to buy the book. And I expected that I would, for the most part, this would be a book I would gift to people like clients or people that just connect with me online. Someone on LinkedIn is like, tell me more about your work, and I would just send them a book. That's what I expected. Uh, what happened was quite a few people bought the book. And one of my clients supported me. He sent it out to his fairly sizable mailing list, and a lot of people buy the book through that avenue. So that's how that went. And hello, Grimby. You can come in, but then the door gets closed with the door closing stick. That's how this works. Close that door with the door closing stick. And then the expectation as far as like what will happen for ongoing sales, I don't have an expectation that this book will become like a bestseller that would be in a bookstore. I don't have an expectation that this will be something people, yeah, I don't have an expectation people will continue to buy this ongoingly. And I don't know yet whether that'll be the case. I think it's an incredibly potent, valuable, really good book, but I don't know if that's something that will like meet the zeitgeist, meet people in the demand currently that's there, or is it like this really great book that sort of like just misses the culture at the time? And I'm not really upset or attached one way or the other. However things go from here is kind of secondary to the fact that like that book's awesome, super stoked by how it turned out, love the color, love the cover, think the book's beautiful, and really excited to just share it with people that want to understand this incredible work called ontological work a little more deeply. And then lastly, Corey says, what did I learn that I did not expect? I learned that when I diminish myself, there's some cost to that. Like there's an impact. And one of the main ways I diminished myself was assuming not that many people will be interested in purchasing this book and supporting me pre-sales, which is a little bit like when I first started coaching, I'd ask a lot of people, not particularly gracefully, like, can you support me, put me in touch with someone? And people were like, yeah, maybe. And then very few people did. That's not on them. It's an awkward thing to like, without really understanding what I'm doing, to just send someone to a coach. I almost wouldn't recommend it. I don't want to shut down people doing that because there's a value in it. But like, um, anyhow, that remnant came forward here, and so I was just like, well, the only way I'm going to get people to pre-sale to get this book to bestseller is one, to sell it for 99 cents on a Kindle, and then two, to like send a free paperback copy to anyone that buys it. So like I double dealed them. And and as a result of that, I had a ton of people sign up for that promotion, and then I had to send, I didn't have to, but well, I guess I did. I promised to send a free paperback to all of them. And sending paperbacks not cheap. Like I'm basically buying a $25 book US and paying at least $10 postage for it. So that's like 35 bucks. And I don't know what I see back from that. I set the commissions fairly low because I wanted to keep the cost low, even though it's a fairly sizable book. So I think that would be like, I might get 10 bucks back. So that's $25 times what, 200, 300, 400, the number of people that pre-bought the book. So I spent a lot of money. It cost a lot of money in terms of me not trusting my impact in the world. So I learned that there's an impact and a cost to when I don't trust my own greatness, don't trust my own light. So don't expect this double dip deal anymore, guys. That's not going to happen for the third book. I have a couple book ideas there for me. I'm taking a bit of a break for now. I want to just write one-off posts. The first one is I have about 35,000 words written, which are kind of like Get a Grip or Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni, or what's the other one? The Goal. These are sort of narrative, like parable leadership books. So they teach leadership, but through a story being told. And I've written about 35,000 words in line with Jonathan. Some of you may remember some of my older posts about Jonathan and how to enroll and how to develop leadership and how to work with people. So that's like a sizable amount of work I've put together, but I'm not sure if that's actually the next book. I also am, I really have this idea to write a book on just coaching. So this kind of teaches a model for relating to people and to seeing people and to like how to see the essence of people and how to lead and work with that. But I haven't written a book specifically on like the art of coaching and techniques and how to build that and what we're trying to do and what does it mean to create a breakthrough and transformation. So there might be a book on that. And then the third one would be more like a book of loose kind of essays, like the ontological model for dis-ease that I've just finished writing, that 5-part series, the energetic laws of leadership, that's that 10-part series I've written. I'm not totally clear what to do with those. They kind of sit there right now and they're awesome, but like I'd like to kind of build those out and do something more with them. So there's that. So yeah, that's kind of where the book's set. Great question, Corey. I like it when people ask questions that let me talk about myself. Okay, I think the last question we have is from Sharafat again, and she says, I've caught myself a lot of the time sharing a conversation I have with someone, with another person, in their absence, just to prove a point. So Sharafat talks to person A, now she's in a conversation with person B, and she's sharing the conversation with person A in order to prove a point to person B. She says, something in me feels it's a betrayal. How do I know when not to go too extreme and sharing too much about other people while in a conversation with them? So this is like an interesting question because where I'm going to go is not quite the heart of this question. What Sharafat is asking is like, given that I'm going to share, or given that I feel this need to share in order to prove a point, what is the right amount to share? And how do we discern like how much to share versus how little? What I think is a more interesting place to look is like, what's going on for me that I feel the need to prove a point this strongly, that I would grab this other conversation and bring it in here and be like, now I'm proving a point. That's the place I think would be more interesting to get curious about. what has me so fixated on proving a point here? And oftentimes, this can be a quality of people with the quality of brilliance can get really fixated on being right because our brilliance, we feel seen and loved when we do things the right way. And brilliance is really good at figuring out. Brilliance is really good at seeing all of the moving parts, synthesizing them, meaning like understand them and fit them inside your own mental model, and then figure like what's the right way to do this. And so people with the quality of brilliance get really good at like being right. And what happens is that over time doing this and getting rewarded for doing it, the school system rewards you for it, careers reward you for it, our parents reward us for it, blah, blah, blah. Over time, as we do this enough, being right becomes a substitute for being enough, or put differently, for being loved exactly as we are. And being wrong becomes a substitute for being not enough. You are garbage. You are worthless unless you are right. So we lose sight of ourselves and our own greatness and our own beautiful self-worth entirely. And instead, the only thing we can see is like, I need to be right, because if I'm right, I have value. It doesn't occur that way in our head. That's not how we fit it together, but that's actually what's happening underneath the consciousness. That tends to be what's going on. So as a result, when someone with a lot of brilliance is in a conversation and the conversation starts to become something where there's like the notion of a right answer or a wrong answer, the person who has brilliance gets very fixated on proving their point. Or they get very fixated on, like, if you say something, correcting you so that you understand what they actually said. Have you ever been this person or been around someone like this where they're like, no, that's not what I mean. And then it's very important that you let that person know what you actually mean. Here's a fun. Here's a place I noticed, like I used to do this a lot, would be I'd have a conversation with a potential client. We'd coach them or whatever. I'd tell them what's on offer, and then they'd go away, and then they'd come back, and they'd be like, hey, I love the conversation. I think now is just not the time because I don't actually want like coaching. I don't think what I need is like leadership coaching that'll help me be a better leader at my organization. I think what I need is to hire someone to help me be better with my siblings. And like that was infuriating to me because I was like, that's what this work is. Like that's what we do. And I couldn't just let them have that. I felt this burning need to reach out via email, grab them by the neck and poke them in the forehead until they understood that they were saying no to the very thing that they claimed they want, and then throw them away. And then my email communication would end. And I would send an email like that. It would suck to receive. And I'd never hear from them again because I was a dick. So that what was happening there was this part of me that really would be like kind of fixated on being right and not being misunderstood and blah, blah, blah. I would lose sight of the greater commitment I had, which was to like empower people in their own process, to affirm people in the choices they're making after they can see the choices that they're making, and to like also develop this ability to notice like how much capacity do they have. When someone tells you no thank you, that's not the time to say, okay, great, but let me just tell you what you're actually, no, they've already told you no thank you, Adam. You don't need to like give them more. They're clearly a no. So I couldn't see that because I was hooked by that part of you, that part of my brilliance I've just described. I need to be right and they're making me wrong and So to bring it back to what Sharafat's asking, we'll come to the second part of her question, but like the first thing I think is more interesting is noticing this part of you that is fixated on proving a point. And what's really getting triggered in you here? What is the thing about yourself that's happening here that has you so needy about proving a point? And the reason that's such a valuable place to look is that as you the more you get fixated on proving a point, the more that becomes all that matters. And if that's all that matters, it doesn't matter if we tell Sharafat the right level of sharing from person A's conversation is 30%, or if we gave any kind of formula, it doesn't matter because in that moment she's hijacked by this need to prove herself right. And she might even now know the right level's 30%, but I can't stop myself. Damn it. I have to prove the point. I'm going to do it anyhow. And then I'll hate myself for it afterwards, but at least in this moment, right? So that's what's happening when we get triggered. When that part of ourselves that hasn't gotten the love from us that we need, that part of ourselves that's been replaced by this notion of right or wrong or selfish or generous or whatever it is for you, when that part of us gets triggered, we're on rails like a railroad train. We can't choose anything other than must do the thing I must do. And so that's kind of what I would assert is happening for Sheriff out here. She's getting hooked into like, I need to prove a point. And as a result, it doesn't matter what the right level is. So that's where I would turn your attention, Sharafat, is like, what's really getting triggered there? And what could you bring more love to in yourself? And what could you bring more love to in other people when you notice they're trying to prove a point? How could you release that need to prove a point? And what are you committed to greater than proving someone right or wrong? And then lastly, we can come to that other question, which is like something in me feels like a bit of a betrayer. How do I know when not to go too extreme and sharing too much about other people while I'm in conversation? Well, I don't know. I think a good like measure is how comfortable would I be going to this person and telling them, by the way, I shared this with someone else? Would you, if you can go to someone and tell them that and be with the impact of that, great, go ahead and do it. There's no right answer here. Now, the impact might be they're like, fuck you, I'm never telling you anything again. Okay, but if you're all right with that impact, if you're willing to stand and be with that impact and like really let that person share how you impacted them by sharing, that's okay. It's okay for you to do it. There's no right or wrong to this. We want there to be a right answer out there, like just off of the screen. There's like a book that's floating that's gold and has lights coming off of it. And it says the right answers for all of your questions. And it's like, it's okay to share this, but not that. But in these situations, except for that, it's very biblical. But it doesn't exist. That isn't there. That doesn't actually exist. And instead, the conversation, I think, always comes back to our integrity. Would I be willing to come to this person and tell them what I've done and just hear about my impact? And if you're willing to do that, then you can do a great deal. You can share and you'll learn. Oh, wow, that really didn't work. I've cleaned up the mess, and I'm not going to do that again because I felt kind of crappy cleaning up that mess. That's amazing. You've learned something new for you. So you've started to calibrate the answer. So that's what I would give to you, Sharafat, for this second part of the question, which is, am I willing to bring this back to the person and share with them what I've done and be with my impact? And if not, well, that kind of answers your question. Rajan says, Adam, do you use body language as a tool? I know you use humor. That's a great question. Here's how I would answer it, which might be a little wordy. I think the most powerful way we can communicate is through full expression. And so what that means is, how much of myself am I willing to like allow to be expressed naturally, as opposed to people don't want me to yell, or I need to be a certain way in order for people to like what I share. So therefore, I end up kind of contorted and I talk quietly and I'm very polite and I use a lot of thank yous. That's not full expression. That's like performance. When I'm fully expressed, I have a lot of passion. And what I notice is that passion has a way of showing up in my body, which is I use a lot of my hands move and I smile a lot and I make fun of myself and I have fun. And when I allow my innate wit, the wit that I am, to be fully expressed, I make a lot of jokes, and that comes forward naturally. So it's not that I'm kind of using them as a tool, like, oh, if I use wit here, that'll help this point land. It's more that I'm letting myself be fully expressed as the man that I am. And as we allow ourselves to be fully expressed, that becomes magnetic. The more we can just be ourselves as we show up and speak and do whatever we do, the more that resonates with people. And so I kind of use it as a tool, but it's more like it's just coming out naturally as by virtue of me just being Adam and letting Adam out into the space. And that's also why doing these lives isn't a draining thing, is because I'm not in resistance to what's natural for me. I'm just showing up as me, being me. And when people talk about time flies when we're having fun, the, that's not quite true. What's true is that typically when we're having the most fun is when we are the most self-expressed. When we are having the most fun is when we are not in any kind of resistance to ourselves. When we're out with friends, when we're talking to people that we really like, that we feel we can be ourselves around. And when we're around people or situations or circumstances where we are already in a state where we can just be who we are, time flies. It's effortless because there's no amount of you trying to contort yourself or show up the right way. And the cool thing is that's available in everything we do. Every aspect of our life, if we want to take on this kind of work, it's possible for us to be fully expressed, no matter what we're doing. And when you do that, time starts to just slip away. You notice that time just kind of generally flies all the time because there's no longer this experience of being drained because you're not in resistance to anything. You're just showing up, being you, having a great time, enjoying yourself, or being sad when that's the thing to be. See you around, Anna. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I think we're actually at the end here. Maria, you never shared the thing you got for yourself by virtue of what I was sharing about the one wheel. So I'd love it if you put that in the comments. I'm going to come back and read that. Thanks everyone for coming. Huge thank you to David, Sharafat, Anna, Alexandra, and Corey for your questions. Really, really great ones. I really appreciate how you contribute to all of us. It just makes such a difference. Thanks, Rocky, Anna, Rajan. Who else is here with us? Merci, c'est de rien. Chrissy was here. Anyone else to shout out to? Monica, Mia. Thank you all you. Oh, Maria. Thank you all you beautiful people. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you in uh, semanos. I think that's right. Dos semanos. Yeah, me. Yeah, me. 2 weeks. See y'all in 2 weeks. Have an amazing time. Y'all take care of this planet and this ontological space and everything while I'm gone. Okay. I don't want to come back and see all fucked up. Right. Bye, guys.